Representation in video games? Is it an impossible task to get right? With every major game entry comes a new host of discussions on representation. Is it authentic? Is it meaningful? Who's not represented? But can representation ever be done in a way that makes everyone come together in universal harmony, singing and chanting about the unity it created to break down the barriers between whole communities? Sorry, I couldn't even get through that. The reality is that with every major entry, someone will be upset about who is portrayed, how they're portrayed, or who's missing entirely. Whether we're debating the presence of Africans in medieval Europe, female protagonist, or whatever the hell this was supposed to represent. Someone is always unhappy. But why? Why does everyone need to be seen in a game? Video games are, for many, escapism, a way to leave the real world behind, about the fantasy of being something you aspire to be. Whether you aspire to wield a tentacle arm? Let's call it an arm. Definitely an arm that shoots black ink at injustice, or wield wrecking ball-grade chesticles to smash evil into oblivion. Games can provide not only the abilities to do this, but also connect with like-minded cephalopods. This way you can get together with your fellow tentacle buddies and swap stories over a cup of hot ink. It's no surprise then that people take representation in games personally. We all want to feel seen and accepted, to find our place within a community of like-minded deviants who understand and embrace the weird, flawed, and brilliant aspects of who we are. Games offer that space, a shared playground where everyone can belong, except me. I don't belong anywhere. Well, there was that one time, but no, they thought it was someone else. In any case, representation matters, but that doesn't mean it's easy. Female characters often become flashpoints, not just for who they are, but because of the conflicting expectations placed on them. These forces don't just critique, they pull in opposite directions, placing an unusually high burden on how female characters are written and received. They are expected to perform ideological acrobats, satisfying multiple contradictory demands. That makes them a sharp and grounded example of the impossible balancing act developers have to navigate. Female characters in games seem to face endless scrutiny. No matter how they're designed or portrayed, someone always has an issue, no matter what developers do. Too strong, too weak, too bald, too much hair, too ugly, too sexy, too reserved, too flirty, too formulaic, too supportive, too ugly, too witcher, too female, too thin, too fat, too flat, too man-hating, which you could check out in my previous video. And I feel like I'm missing something. Oh yeah, too ugly. It seems like female characters can never get it right for everyone. They're constantly dissected, scrutinized, and criticized in ways their male counterparts really are. Male characters mostly get a free pass. The biggest complaints? Too white, too straight, too dead inside, too thin, too fat. Oh no, people actually liked him for that. Criticisms of male characters are comparatively rare and far less intense. When was the last time you saw an in-depth debate about whether Kratos was muscular enough, or whether he adequately represented the phallically challenged, or whether Master Chief's armor was not bulky enough in the right places? And you get comments like,
"Teeny peeny doesn't represent meanie."
But for a certain group of players, the loudest ones in the room, even small deviations from the norm trigger outrage. Male characters are allowed to simply exist. Their stories are taken at face value, less commonly questioned or dissected for hidden agendas the same way female characters are. Female characters have to pass a purity test, a beauty test, and an ideological test, all before the game's even out. And if they fail, suddenly the whole game is political. Can you imagine if studios constantly had to justify their character choices and explain their stances on everything before their games are even released? Oh, wait, this already happens. So I did what anyone else would do. I scrapped around 83,000 YouTube comments and flagged anything that leaned cultural or political. From that subset, about 15,000 comments, I pulled a focus sample of around 800 comments across 5 major titles to get a closer read on any trends. Other people do that too, right? And to keep it relevant, I focused entirely on comments from the last 3 years, which is also when all 5 games in the sample were released. And let's be honest, comment sections don't represent everyone. They represent the loudest people with the strongest reactions. That usually means you're not hearing from the people who liked the representation, and you're also not hearing from people who might have complex or thoughtful critiques, but aren't interested in turning comment sections into a war zone. But that's kind of the point. The discourse isn't shaped by silent agreement or quiet reflection, it's shaped by noise. And that noise? It isn't just limited to my sample. The same sentiment pattern showed up across all kinds of recent and even upcoming games. So we're not dealing with an isolated backlash or game-specific drama. It's a broader trend, one one that, honestly, many of you have probably already noticed. Here's what I found. Games with prominent female characters had, on average, approximately 3 times more political discourse in their comment sections before and shortly after release, with comments such as from South of Midnight, more forced diversity, or from the Fable trailer, leftists, activists spoil another industry. Even in male-led games, it's often the female side characters who dominate the discourse, especially when it comes to appearance or politics, such as from Marvel's Spider-Man 2. If the game didn't associated with Sweet Baby Incorporated, an MJ won't be having a dog face in a man's body. Or from Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, well, the enemy is a black girl boss and your companion isn't as attractive as in the original indie movies, so doesn't look great. The discourse isn't just about who's in charge of the story, it's about who's visible. The more a character diverges from the cultural default, typically male, white, straight, or conventionally attractive female, the more likely it is that the comment sections became a hotbed. And when female characters deviate from traditional beauty norms, the backlash amplifies dramatically. On average, it was approximately 15.6 times more likely to have criticism surrounding their appearance, with comments like from Silent Hill 2 remake. The only negative I have with this remake is that the female characters look like either with strong jaws or chubby face, just for woke's sake. Apart from that, everything else looks amazing. Or from the Fable trailer, amazingly they managed to create the ugliest female character in the history of the game industry. But representation doesn't inherently cause backlash. It's the perception of deviation that triggers volatility. In other words, when people that fall into this sort of discourse say, just make good characters, what they really mean is, make characters that don't threaten my sense of norm. And it just keeps escalating. Nobody agrees. Half the audience wants more powerful and meaningful female characters, half demands more traditionally feminine characters, the other half just wants to die because they're exhausted from hearing this. Wait, is that math right? While one group explodes at the sight of an average woman, others push back against lazy tokenism or shallow characters. Representation isn't just controversial when it's present, it gets criticized when it feels hollow or mechanical. That's the real balancing act, navigating demands for more and better representation while dodging culture war landmines the entire way. Take Spider-Man 2 for example. While comment sections were flooded with people yelling about MJ's face, other critiques were quietly published elsewhere. As one article put it, the few female characters who did feature in the story were barely anything more than footnotes in the actual events of the story and could easily be written out. The vast majority of Spider-Man 2's female characters are almost exclusively love interest for the male heroes to pursue. This underscores a common complaint that female characters are underwritten and often sidelined into the same narrow narrative roles, but that frustration isn't just anecdotal. According to a survey conducted by Green Davis Institute, 47% of gamers agree with the statement, I am less likely to play a video game that uses gender stereotypes. This finding suggests that many gamers are dissatisfied with common gender stereotypes in games. Also, according to Brighter from their 2023 report, 2 in 3 women gamers feel that female characters are often over-sexualized. While there have been an increase in strong female protagonists in recent years, such as Lara Croft from the more recent Tomb Raiders, Ellie from The Last of Us, Aloy from Horizon, there are still plenty of games that add in female characters either as a silent damsel to rescue or as something nice to look at. 56% of all gamers say they cannot relate to female characters in games, and only 35% of female gamers say they can. In addition, Brighter reports that many female gamers want to see more strong female leads that can hold their own in who they want to champion, with 54% saying there are not enough strong female characters in video games. And it turns out there's a reason why so many of these characters feel forgettable. A 2023 study published in Royal Society Open Science analyzed over 6 million words of dialogue from 50 role-playing games. It found that female characters speak significantly less than male characters, not just because there are fewer of them, but because they're often written into narrower, less central roles. Even when present, they're sidelined through stereotyped dialogue and fewer meaningful interactions. So it's no wonder many players walk away feeling disconnected, because female characters often aren't written to drive the narrative at all. And that disappointment, even without outrage, can be just as hard to design around, because developers aren't just caught between competing demands, they're caught between silence and shouting, authenticity and optics, intent and interpretation. Developers are trying to navigate that minefield with deadlines, budgets, and executives breathing down their necks like money zombies. Devs are like, strong female lead? Get attacked. Traditional male hero? Get attacked. Stick figure leads? I sued. Honestly, just because they're 2D doesn't mean they don't have layers. It's 2025. Do better. And making it even harder? Eve. I mean money. What? AAA games cost hundreds of millions. If they don't sell like crazy, studios die. Firerock Studio. So they cast a wide net, more diverse characters, bigger appeal, try to make everyone happy. But when they try to please everyone, you risk pleasing no one, especially when everyone comes with wildly unequal expectations. So how do developers dodge this chaos? Many don't even try. They let you make the character via create your own systems. That way, if you hate the protagonist, well, it's your fault. That's part of why create your own character games have been on the rise. It's the safe route for many developers. They don't have to create rich characters with fully defined character arcs, since the objective is for the player to inject themselves into them. So they design them more or less as blank slates to be molded by the player. It's the safest way to avoid a backlash. Skip the character, skip the discourse. As Neil Druckmann, creative director behind The Last of Us 2, or to some, Satan in the Flesh, once said, "With The Last of Us 2, we made certain creative decisions that got us a lot of hate. A lot of people love it, but a lot of people hate that game." His comment underscores how even the most carefully constructed stories face fire from many angles. Not because they're wrong, but because they don't land cleanly with everyone. But not every developer has to walk that tightrope. Indie games like Signalis or Celeste, both featuring queer protagonists, often tell stories that feel more personal and self-directed. Without shareholders or mass market expectations, their creators can prioritize narrative themes over strategic market positioning. That freedom can allow for more integrated representation, not added as an obligation, but thematically woven into the core of the game. Indie games are usually made for more targeted niche audiences, meaning they could better integrate the sort of meaningful representation many ask for. And in doing so, they remind us not every story needs to scale, sometimes it just needs to connect. All of this shows just how shaky the balancing act really is, even for devs with the best intentions. Perfect representation might be impossible, not because developers aren't trying, but because the audience has changed. In the past, games were mostly aimed at one core demographic. The expectations were narrower. Pleasing the majority was easier because the majority was basically one group, but that's not the gaming landscape anymore. Player base is massive, fractured, and global. What inspires one group feels hollow to another. What feels bold to some might feel preachy or pandering to others. Games aren't just power fantasies anymore, they're storytelling vehicles and artistic statements. They've become more like movies, cinematic, narrative-driven, and sometimes deeply personal. And just like movies, they've inherited the same problem. No matter how good your story or artistic design is, someone's going to walk out and say, "The f*** did I just watch?" Maybe the goal isn't to please everyone. Maybe it's to stop pretending that's even possible. Maybe not every game has to be for everyone. Maybe it just has to know who it's for and say something worth hearing. The gaming community is more diverse than ever, and trying to tell stories that resonate with every single player across that spectrum is a recipe for creative paralysis. Thanks for sticking around. If you like this, a like and subscribe really helps the channel grow. And if you want more deep dives into the weird emotional world of gaming culture, you know where to find me. This is Vexaloon, signing out. Until next time.